On the morning of January 12, 1888, the sun rose over the vast, snow-dusted plains of the American Northwest. In the Dakota Territory, Nebraska, and beyond, the air was unusually mild, a deceptive calm that coaxed settlers out of their homes. Farmers tended to their livestock, and parents sent their children off to school with little more than light jackets, relieved by the break from the typical deep freeze of winter. They had no idea that within hours the sky would turn on them. They couldn't know that this day would be seared into history not by its date, but by its victims. This is the story of the Schoolchildren's blizzard, a meteorological monster that appeared without warning and left a trail of unimaginable tragedy in its wake. The settlers, many of whom were recent immigrants from Scandinavia and Germany, were accustomed to harsh weather. But they were not prepared for what was coming. Their experience was with slow-moving storms that announced their arrival with hours of darkening skies and falling temperatures. This was different. This was an ambush. Around midday, just as children sat in their one-room schoolhouses, the world outside their windows vanished. The temperature plummeted with shocking speed, dropping by as much as 100 degrees Fahrenheit in some areas over the course of the day. The gentle breeze erupted into a howling gale, a furious wall of white that instantly reduced visibility to zero. The sky and the ground merged into a single churning vortex of ice and snow. The blizzard had struck. Trapped inside their flimsy wooden schoolhouses, teachers, many of them young women barely out of their teens, faced an impossible choice. The storm's fury was shaking the buildings to their foundations. Fine, powdery snow, as sharp as sand, forced its way through every crack in the walls and window frames, quickly coating the rooms in a layer of white. Fuel for the potbelly stoves was often stored in outdoor sheds, now completely unreachable. As the fires began to die, the life-threatening cold seeped in. The decision was stark: stay and risk freezing to death inside the collapsing, unheated school, or attempt a desperate dash to the nearest shelter. For many, the perceived safety of a nearby farmhouse, perhaps only a few hundred yards away, seemed the more logical option. But in the blinding chaos of a whiteout, distance becomes meaningless. Directions warp. A straight path becomes a labyrinth. Minnie Freeman, a 19-year-old teacher in a Nebraska-sod schoolhouse, watched as the wind ripped the roof from her building. With no other choice, she tied her 13 pupils together with a rope and led them into the storm, miraculously finding a farmhouse after hours of wandering blind. She became a hero, celebrated in poems and songs as the Nebraska Blizzard Queen. But for every story of survival, there were countless others that ended in heartbreak. In a schoolhouse near a small Dakota town, a teacher decided to keep her students inside. They huddled together, burning their textbooks and even the floorboards to stay warm through the night. They survived. Just a few miles away, another teacher, faced with the same dilemma, chose to lead her students out. Believing they could make it to a home less than half a mile away, she tied them together and stepped into the gale. They quickly became disoriented. The children, clad only in their light morning clothes, were no match for the ferocious wind and sub-zero temperatures. The next day, rescuers found them frozen solid, a tragic tableau of children huddled around their teacher, just a few feet from the safety they never reached. The stories of that day are a litany of terror and loss. Two brothers, aged 9 and 11, left their school and were found the next day frozen in a haystack, their arms wrapped around each other. A young girl was discovered standing upright against a fence, her eyes wide open, frozen in place. Entire families perished. One farmer, caught in the open, managed to find his own barn but was so disoriented and frostbitten he couldn't recognize it. He wandered past, collapsing only a short distance from his own front door. Livestock were wiped out by the thousands, frozen where they stood in the fields. The aftermath was a landscape of silent horror. When the storm finally subsided the next day, the sun returned to a world transformed and scarred. The brilliant blue sky and sparkling snow seemed to mock the devastation below. Grieving parents and neighbors formed search parties, fanning out across the plains. What they found would haunt them forever. They followed faint trails of footprints that ended abruptly. They dug through massive snowdrifts, uncovering the bodies of children who had fallen just yards from safety. The official death toll was estimated at 235, but many historians believe the true number was far higher, possibly exceeding 500, as many victims in isolated homesteads were never officially recorded. The overwhelming majority of these victims were children, caught between the schoolhouse and the safety of home. This is why the storm would forever be known as the Schoolchildren's blizzard. The blizzard of 1888 was more than just a weather event. It was a turning point. It exposed the brutal vulnerability of life on the Great Plains and etched a deep scar into the collective memory of the region. For generations, survivors would recount the horror of that day, their voices filled with the remembered howl of the wind and the chilling image of a world turned white. The storm prompted significant changes. The U.S. Army Signal Corps, the precursor to the National Weather Service, faced intense criticism for its failure to provide adequate warning. This disaster highlighted the urgent need for a more robust and effective weather forecasting system, especially for the isolated communities of the West. It also led to new safety regulations for rural schools, including requirements to keep emergency supplies of food and fuel on site. But beyond the policy changes, the blizzard left an indelible human legacy. It is a story of nature's terrifying and indiscriminate power, a stark reminder that in the face of such fury, human endeavor can seem fragile and small. Yet it is also a story of incredible bravery and sacrifice. It is the story of teachers who gave their lives trying to save their students, of children who fought to survive against impossible odds, and of communities that came together in the face of unspeakable grief to search for the lost and comfort the grieving. The silent, snow-covered graves that dot the prairies of the Dakotas and Nebraska are a testament to that terrible day. A day when a deceptively warm morning turned into a nightmare and the laughter of children was stolen by the wind.